What's poppin', people? It's Dante, getting my morning started here, thinking about intuition in street photography, how I use intuition, and why I believe intuition matters. And so when I look at the word intuition, it derives from the etymological roots intuere, meaning to watch, to contemplate. When I think about this notion, I think about the way in which maybe we get caught up with our head a bit too much. Maybe as much as we're watching life through our two eyes, right? And through our vision and through our camera lens, I'm not looking at life through the camera. I'm not looking at life and thinking to myself, this is a composition. This could be a potential photograph. I simply watch, I contemplate, and I find that there is potential to make a photograph in a certain situation. But when I make that photograph, I'm not making the photograph with the camera to my eye. I'm making the photograph through recognizing the patterns in nature and human behavior, positioning my body in a particular way at a particular time, raising the camera then to my eye to press the shutter. I'm not glued to my camera like a hawk with my eye to the lens or to the viewfinder. I'm looking at life for what it is. And then my photographs that I make reflect that intuitive state that is much like, it's a flow state. There's a flow state to making a photograph that we need to tap into. The spontaneity on the streets is something unpredictable. There's so much chaos. But when you press the shutter and you recognize that timing and you recognize through your gut that moment, that's where you put order into the composition, but it's through your intuition. It's not through the analytical mind of recognizing the different elements that can make a picture and, oh, let me put this there and that there, and all of these things are going to fall together. These things, I believe, flow naturally. These things, I believe, come through tapping in to the gut. I think it comes through time out there spent wondering, contemplating, looking, and watching life, and then responding to it with openness. And what that openness allows you, when you go out there in the world, without any preconceived notions of what you will find, you will be guided by your camera. You will be guided by your curiosity into unexpected moments that you otherwise would not find. And I think that is where the magic happens. It's through letting go of any expectations, letting go of the result of the photograph, and simply letting life flow to you, and just being open for the ride. And so I decided to pull out an example here on my table to share a particular instance where my intuition really shined in a number of different ways. And so one of the first times I decided to travel abroad and make photographs was in Jerusalem, and I was in Israel, and I decided to take the bus from Jerusalem to Jericho. And it was on this journey that I found myself intuitively engaging with life in a new way, where I brought out an Instax camera, as you can see. And I remember one of the first Instax pictures I took was actually of this scene. Right at the border, I saw all of these sheeps, and there was a man smoking with these children, and I wound up making some photographs with the Instax camera, and I gifted these photographs to the strangers there, and I gifted them to the man, and that was one of the first photographs I made. I intuitively knew that if I were to approach a new community, that I should utilize an Instax camera like a tourist, be playful, and allow that to guide me, and allow that to be the key, right? The camera is the key to unlock the doors to all these experiences in life. And that is what guided me into this new place, into Jericho City. And so after I got comfortable and started to walk around and engage with this community, I recognized that everybody goes to the mosque, 5 times a day. I mean, this is a Muslim place, right? Everybody is gathering at the mosque. Maybe I should go there. My intuition, my gut told me, go into that mosque, And I think that there is a really important trait like intuition that a photographer must possess, and that being courage, core, meaning heart. And so that's where I find that my photographs come from. It comes from the heart. It doesn't come from the 2 eyes. And so after praying in the mosque, this group of men decided, because I was curious, to invite me for some tea, for some coffee, and I went to their home. I went to their home, we gathered together, and this is me with the two men, and they invited me on a journey to the top of the Wadi Kelt mountain range. And when we were on this journey to the top of the mountain, we ran into a bit of a situation here, as you can see in this contact sheet. The car broke down as we were climbing the mountain. You see I'm shooting out the window, and then here we are with the car broke down in the background, and the men began to push the car up the mountain to get it back up and running. And at a scene like this, you really need to respond quickly. You need to respond to the moment intuitively. And this is where intuition really comes into play. So when I was making photographs at this particular scene, I started by only photographing the car. I shot a picture of the car here. Let me zoom in to the contact sheet. And so I began photographing at the scene, just shooting pictures of the car. I moved over and I got another image as the man was going over to push the car. And then my intuition tapped in and I said, you know what, this looks like it's falling flat. This composition's falling flat. There's not enough going on in the foreground. And I wanted to make the composition more compelling. And so my intuition guided me, and I simply lowered my perspective using the vehicle as a foreground element to elevate the composition and to tell the story at this scene. And so by using my intuition and by looking at life in front of me, it guided me to ultimately make that photograph. And the reason why I made the compositional choice of including that part of the car in the frame, as much as it was something that is visually appealing, as much as it's a visual element that fills the frame, it made most sense for me in the moment because of the story that was unfolding, because of life in front of me happening this way, because of the spontaneity of the car breaking down. I knew that this was a part of the story to tell. I knew that this was something to include intuitively. I knew that I needed that element in order to elevate the frame. And now while looking at the photograph, would you understand the story? Would you understand what's going on? There could be a number of interpretations of this particular moment. I don't think that really matters. But what matters is the fact that I understood on my toes in that moment very quickly and spontaneously that in order to make a photograph of this particular moment, I needed to include something more in the frame. And so my intuition, I think, is the thing that ultimately guides me in life. And with courage at the forefront, anything is possible. We got to the top of the mountain, we enjoyed some tea and some coffee, and we danced on top of this mountain range, and we were enjoying ourselves, and I have all of these memories here. And another story about intuition and how the camera sort of guides me like a compass is my story of Mexico City. And here at the top of this mountain, I made a photograph of the boy climbing the cross. And when I arrived in Mexico City, I was photographing, in the very obvious locations, in the markets, photographing where all the action is, where all the people are, the typical Mexico City locations. However, I remember looking out into the distance and seeing a mountain range, seeing this beautiful vista in the distance and wondering, is that Mexico City? Like, what part of town is that? Like, that looks pretty interesting. I wonder what's on top of the mountain, right? And by following my gut and simply going, and simply with my curiosity guiding me and my courage at the forefront, I wound up getting in a taxi. And I don't even remember how I found the place. I went on Google Maps or something and just zoomed out and looked at the maps and stuff. And I just clicked on one of the towns, and I said, "Oh, take me here," And so I wound up at this location, took this gondola ride up the mountain, and I said, "Let's just go to the very top." I went to the last stop on this mountaintop, and then climbing to the top of the mountain, I discovered these beautiful moments, this beautiful scene. And by playing and being curious and remaining in this state of openness, a scene simply unfolded. These boys were at the top of the mountain playing and climbing, and what happened at that moment was this. This is the moment. And when I'm photographing at a scene like this, I decided that I needed to drop low. I needed to make sure that the subject is very prominent in the frame. I wanted to make sure that I include the cross within the photograph. I wanted to make sure that the moment is visible and legible, quite similar to the photograph that I made on top of this mountain, where you need to be mindful of the visual pieces as much as you're tapped in to your intuition. And I think this is where the magic happens. It's by meshing your analytic mind, the mind of a photographer, recognizing composition, recognizing leading lines, recognizing how to frame things, but being responsive and being quick to make those adjustments. It requires your intuition, if that makes sense. It requires this sort of contemplation of watching things unfold. And then as you're watching things unfold, you respond quickly, you respond on your toes. When I photographed this scene at this chaotic frenzy in a playground in Mumbai, I knew that I needed to get close. I knew that in order to make this photograph, I should just be playful to be close to the scene. And I saw the toy gun come out very quickly. That toy gun just, that shot out randomly. I didn't see that coming at all. That to me is the spontaneous nature of making a photo. And I couldn't predict this boy's eyes looking right up at it, causing that tension in the frame. I couldn't predict the girl in the background with a Band-Aid on her face. Things kind of fall together naturally, but it's through contemplating and watching a scene and responding through your gut that eventually gets you to the result of the photograph. And the idea is, when you're photographing, you're simply curious about what reality will manifest to be in a photograph. You're simply looking at life and you're responding intuitively. You're not looking at life and seeing pictures. The picture is a result of you positioning yourself at a particular time and pressing the shutter. I'm not looking at life with the camera to my eye. When I'm at the scene with the car that broke down, I'm looking at life and I'm recognizing the different elements in front of me and how to position my body to make that photograph. Hopefully some of this makes sense and helps. The intuition topic is interesting to me because when I'm on the streets, I really do tap into this flow state. Most of the time, I'm not thinking about pictures. I'm simply looking at life. And I hope that something I said is beneficial and helps you in your journey. Yeah, I think just use the camera as your guide, like a compass. Follow your curiosity. And yeah, I think leading through your photographic process with intuition is critical, right? Like another example from Mexico City with this scene, we have the mural in the background. I saw the potential of a photograph to be made here, right? When I photographed this scene, I noticed the beautiful mural. I noticed the light. I noticed the way in which people moved in and out of this scene. I sort of contemplated, I watched, I waited with patience for things to unfold, making many pictures here for 10, 20 minutes. And then the moment came, right, where the man came with the thing on his cart, moving in a particular direction, snapping the shutter, and then that spontaneity, that result of the photograph isn't necessarily entirely in my control. I'm simply looking at life and responding, and I'm patient and I'm observing the patterns, right? I'm observing the light. I'm observing the patterns that exist and sort of with my flow, letting life come to me, right? Patient at the scene, watching and sort of contemplating and responding to life with my gut. And then there's the playful element of the mural being, a hand and the emphasis of the man's hands, which is a small sort of element that comes together at the scene. if there's anything else that I can use to describe intuition. This is the first photograph I made when I was in Jerusalem, and it was by the wall, an old city, the Wailing Wall. And at that scene, everybody was, at the wall, which is to the right of me. That's where everyone was praying. But my intuition always guides me to the outskirts of a scene. They're just coming out of the bathroom. They're coming out of the bathroom, and I'm watching the way in which the feet move on the street. I'm watching the movement of the people and responding to that through my intuition, through my gut. I'm observant, I'm contemplating, I'm watching, I'm patient. I'm not photographing the obvious moment of the man praying. I'm looking at them coming out of the bathroom, and I recognize that there's a potential photograph to make, and I respond to that quickly. Similar to this scene with the boy doing a wheelie, I responded quickly. I only had 1 or 2 shots. There's maybe 2 boys coming by doing wheelies. My intuition told me to drop low. If I were to photograph this moment at eye level, you wouldn't be able to recognize the boy doing the wheelie. He would be crushed by the background. But I intuitively know when I see something like this fall in my lap as life flows to me, I respond intuitively by dropping my physical body and making a photograph that will be impactful visually. When I made this photograph of Muhammad Ali's the final call, this is a local newspaper in the city, in Philly, I responded very intuitively. I saw the way in which this man's face was being covered by Muhammad Ali's face. And I just responded quickly. You see things, you see patterns, and you respond quickly. Another example of intuition taking over. As much as the colors match, as much as, I don't know, I think this has gotten cropped off, but you should be able to see more of that actually. I don't know what happened here. This scene, the turn on red, it's intuition. As much as I can tell you that I, decided to frame it a particular way and position my body this way, all I really saw was the life in front of me. All I really saw were 2 red shirts and 2 blue shirts. The 2 blue signs, I didn't really notice that. The turn on red, I didn't notice that. It's intuition. And these are 2 other examples maybe that are random. These are just random photos I made with my new process in black and white, okay? It's very similar, though. Like the process of recognizing, where to position your body and to press the shutter, right? With the man walking across the street with a blanket on his back, I knew that I needed to raise the camera in order to incorporate that background of the leading lines, that background of these white stripes, to match the color of the blanket. When I saw that scene, I had to raise my camera up high. I see a quick fleeting moment, and I respond to that quick fleeting moment with spontaneity, with speed, with curiosity and intuition, and I raise the camera, press the shutter, and then the result is me recognizing life and where to position things. Similar to the snake being held in front of City Hall here, I noticed as people were petting the snake, and I noticed that the way City Hall sat in the background, and I intuitively, instead of being at a high angle, dropped low to put these pieces together, and then the hand sort of falls into place. And I think I should stop there because we're getting too much into composition when I'm trying to talk about intuition. But I think that these things relate, and I think that when you tap into the flow state and you follow your intuition, it'll put you in a situation, it'll put you in this state of being where you can sort of just respond intuitively. You can look at life in front of you and not be so analytical about the composition, but kind of allow the pieces to fall as they may. But you're in this sort of spirit of play, sort of tinkering, contemplating, watching, responding, and you're not thinking too much in the moment. You're responding. I think that's the point. You're not being too hyper analytical. You just recognize patterns, you recognize different elements, and you respond with your gut as much as you respond with your two eyes. You know, the point is to not hesitate and to take more photos. Like, I mean, you see the context sheet, took a lot of photos of the scene. You know, I photographed through the car window, I photographed outside the car window, I got out of the car, you know, I photographed into the windshield. You know, I photographed a number of different ways. You know, I didn't hesitate. And I think that's the point of this video, actually, to wrap up, is to shoot more, right? To shoot more photographs at a scene, and to then come back and review and then figure out what it all means. And yeah, hopefully that's all good. Gonna get my chuck roast in for the day, and yeah, go back out there again and again. Shout out to Rockhaven Family Farm. Not for sale, baby. This is that real shit, yo. I got that real shit. This ain't no lab grown meat, baby.